Greetings and salutations, everyone. It's been a hot minute. I think since January we've done an FAQ Monday. I thought it was high time to answer your questions that you submitted to me on multiple platforms. And we're just going to hang out. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to talk about some things. And hopefully you, as well as I, get some fulfillment from it. Let's dive in, shall we? Do you have any plans to record and release your own music again? Love the old black metal bicycle stuff as well as Death Like Destroyer. Thank you, Justin Lee. It's a very creative name. I might do a studio project at some point. Sure. I mean, I think having a creative outlet is always good. I don't think I'll ever tour again unless I was like a hired gun to fill in for an existing band, but I'm never gonna start another band. I feel like I'm too old to do that now. I'll be 44 in November. But as far as like studio project, I have been brainstorming about doing something, and I have a bunch of guest vocalists or a bunch of guest musicians on each track. I think that would be pretty cool. Just to, I don't know, keep the creative juices flowing. I'm actually feel like I'm in a pretty good spot musically, and I think that is due in part to the amount of YouTube videos I am making that require me to do write a short tune, but also the amount of stuff I'm mixing always keeps my brain kind of fresh, and I do like that. So to answer your question, yeah, maybe eventually. Nathan Gaskin asks, hey Fluff, was recording and mixing records been exciting? How would you say this has evolved you as a creative artist? Ooh, getting deep here. All right. Recording and mixing records for me is something that I would love to do long term. I get a great deal of enjoyment from it because for me, sonically, it's like putting together a puzzle or doing a math quiz or something. But like you have all the answers, you just got to you got to put the pieces where they need to be. And I love the interaction with the bands, and I love it when I'm not exactly understanding what they're saying. So like we got to jump on a call and we kind of, we tell some jokes and shoot the breeze for a second. Like it really helps me dial in and when I get it, and it goes really, really smoothly. But even if you don't, creatively, it's still just as fulfilling because then you can get on the same page as the artist. And in some cases, when you're doing a mix, they're looking for something that you wouldn't have even thought of. A mix is a very, very personal thing because it's how I would mix something, right? But that's not necessarily what the artist wants. So my job is to really help the artist realize their vision. And in that, I get to kind of creatively explore things that I wouldn't have thought of. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. That's very, very cool. And it's fun. You get to use outboard gear and all that kind of stuff. So for me, like I just said in the last question, it's been very exciting, and I love mixing records, and I hope I do a lot more of it in the future. Kyle Hunt asks, I'm sure you explained this before, but I'm still curious in a way why you left Dragged Under. Put yourself in my shoes. I mean, without going too far into it, I guess for me, I'll be 44 in November, and Dragged Under never made any money. We generated money, but as an example, if we wanted to go and do a European tour, we're going to spend, and as the guy who was helping keep the books and do all the numbers and the paperwork and stuff, we are spending $28,000 plane tickets, gas, van rentals, gear rentals, all of those things. We're spending $28,000 to go over to Europe to then make $18,000. That math doesn't add up, right? So what that meant was over the entirety of Dragged Under, I was always having to come home and sell a guitar, sell an amp in order to make my mortgage, because while I'm gone, I could only do so much video work. I could do a little bit stuff, and as you guys saw, I would try to do it where I could. I would vlog and do all this kind of stuff, but when you factor that in with well, tonight you're eating dinner, you're having a Lunchable at the gas station in the middle of Wisconsin at 4 a.m. today. That's what time dinner is when we're, in the long drive, because we're only stopping to get gas because it's a 12-hour drive to the next show, and we're driving ourselves like we always did. We didn't have a bus. We didn't have anything like that, right? So the entire time we were hustling and we were working so hard. We were working ourselves to death for nothing. So we're hungry, we're broke, and underslept, and underate. So over a period of 4 years, you get kind of tired of it. And then at some point you think, yeah, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. The musical part of it is always amazing, and being on stage is incredible. But for me, I'm tired of Lunchables for dinner. That's it. John Brown asks, how is Fluff? How has Guitar Gear YouTube changed in recent years in your opinion? Oh boy. It's changed so much since I got into this whole thing. I know I'm sure you guys have heard the term. It's the Mr. Beastification of YouTube, right? So I've always felt like, well, I've been called one of the OGs of the guitar YouTube space, which is weird for me. But nowadays, people not only want, in the Guitar Gear space, not only do people want me to say, I love this, or I hate this, I think this thing sucks. They also want to see me catch it on fire. They want to see me burn it and then do a giveaway with the ashes. Like, everything is so sensationalized and so on 10, whether we're talking about the content itself or the thumbnails. The thumbnails have to be a reaction thing and big bright colors and all that kind of stuff. When I started doing YouTube, no one thought about thumbnails. I don't even recall you being able to upload a thumbnail at first, back in like 2010. I don't recall a thumbnail being an option to upload. So it's changed so much. And for me, my channel's always been a slow burn. I don't have viral videos. I don't have anything like that. Like a lot of my peers, I was never a Jared Dines, right? I never suddenly had 1 million subs, and he worked very hard for those subs. But for me, in the Guitar Gear space, this is such a small space, is, in my opinion, eating itself. And it's so oversaturated, and it's all, I don't know, man. I don't watch guitar videos anymore. There's a lot of creative folks out there, but I often feel like I'm Tommy Lee Jones in No Country for Old Men. World is passing me by. I sometimes feel like that. But then other times, I feel like, I don't know, I'm not that. But the whole time, I'm always doing everything that I find interesting and fun. That's all I can do. So that aspect has not changed. But I think the world around me has definitely could not have changed more in the time that I've been doing this. Jake Stanton asks, what do you look for in rhythm guitar tones from the context of a producer/mix engineer? Where are you wanting them to specifically sit in the mix frequency-wise, and what role do you want them to fill? Great question, Jake. For me, I'm going to listen to the band's demo to kind of get a sense of what they're looking for, right? So if I'm listening to, I'm just going to throw a band out there that has a really neat guitar tone off the top of my head, Landmarks, I know that they want a real mid-range heavy guitar tone. But what is also related to that is I'm going to get the drums and the bass guitar roughed in pretty good before I even worry about the drum or the guitar tone. The guitar tone is there to fill in the spaces that the bass, drums, and vocals do not, for me. As a guitar player, do I want the guitar tones to be cranked at all times? Yes, I do. Can they be? No, they cannot be. Today's modern mixes don't have a lot of guitar. And if they do have guitar, they're pretty dipped compared to, a mix done, 15 years ago or 20 years ago for that matter. So for me, I do a lot of carving, and it's important that you capture the vibe that the band wants, but the guitar is really there filling the spaces, not the other way around. The guitar is not the driving factor. In most even guitar-driven mixes, it's not going to happen. The guitars can't be muddy. It's going to eat into the lower spectrum of the bass guitar and the drums. So for me, the mixes are always going to be pretty drum intense, but that is today's flavor, and I'm totally fine with it. Diego BM asks, Glenn from SMG proved in a recent video a very interesting point on how really the tone changes by trying different cabs and speakers and not necessarily switching pickups, amps, etc. Do you think that debunks the whole signature pickups, amps, guitar industry? That's a great question, Diego. First of all, cabs and speakers absolutely have the most effect on your tone. That is absolutely correct. What I think has actually been happening recently is I've seen this come up a few times before Glenn made his video and stuff like that. But, you know, a lot of the younger people who have never even played a guitar cabinet are finding this information like, whoa, that's really useful. Whereas like old guys, I'm an old guy, we're like, yeah, no kidding. Duh. Like that was always like, that's what the difference between a Mesa and a Marshall and a Greenback and a Vintage 30. And I don't think scrolling through a menu and selecting the different speakers has that same impact, right? So when someone like Glenn shows actual speakers and the differences between them and how they fit in the context, you know, sonically of like a mix or just how different they are and comparing them, it's a real heavy impact. And I think that's a great thing. Does it debunk the whole signature pickups, amps, guitar industry? No, absolutely not, because sonically, you're going to compensate. It's much like gain staging, except it's sound staging, right? So if I have a honky pickup, I'm going to dip the mids on the amplifier because I'm trying to stay within my sonic lane that I want to be in. Much in that, if I have a scooped sounding guitar, then I'm going to boost the mids on the amplifier, and then the speakers are going to accentuate anything that it's fed, right? So it's half dozen of six of one, half dozen of the other for me. But the speakers absolutely have the most hugest impact on your guitar sound overall, but you know, other things still matter, just to a lesser degree. Metal Guitar Guy asks, why are you no longer a Fishman artist even after your own signature pickup? I explained this a little bit in the Danger of Endorsements video. However, I will reiterate what I said in that video, which is, you know, I was with Fishman for a decade as an endorsing artist, right? 2014 is when I signed up with Fishman, and then I subsequently toured with Fishman a lot. And then, as you guys know, and as he just mentioned, I had a signature pickup that came out 2 years ago. Now for me, the appeal for the Fishman stuff was it was all so consistent and it did all sound the same. However, the selection of Fishman in general, I found limiting in the studio. When you want various tones, when you want stuff that's not a high output, high gain tone. And yes, they have the classic series, but I mean, when you look at the overall product line of Fishman versus someone like Seymour Duncan or DiMarzio, I was always wanting something else. And I was in the middle of putting most of my Ernie Ball guitars to stock and my Les Pauls back to stock, having the Fishmans removed and having the stock stuff just put in. Because in a studio setting, I want variety. I want lots of colors and I want lots of crayons. And I didn't feel like I had that with Fishman. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to use something and I'm not going to pitch something to you guys like a signature pickup going, this is the greatest thing in the world, if I don't truly use it or believe that. That was really it. And did I make a little bit of money from the signature pickup thing? Yes, absolutely. Is that more important than using stuff I just want to use? No. So I don't have a signature pickup with Seymour Duncan. I'm not being paid by Seymour Duncan, although I get, you know, free pickups. But I left money on the table with Fishman, and I'm totally okay with that. Fishman were wonderful. Ken Susi, Larry Fishman are amazing. And they're still friends of mine. There's no bad blood or anything like that. I told them in person. And I don't know, if you eat pizza for 10 years, at some point you're going to want to eat something else for dinner. That's just really how I felt. And that's okay. BTGS Brian asks, is the amp sim market oversaturated and has the modeling technology hit a plateau in quality? Is this as good as it gets? Is the amp sim market oversaturated? Yeah, it sure is. Has the modeling technology hit a plateau? Maybe a temporary one. Yeah, sure. It's always going to get better. Is this as good as it gets? No, I don't think so. Not at all. It's going to get better. It's going to continue to get better. You know, the amp sim market, I mean, even when I released my first SIG amp sim in 2020, Like, it wasn't that crowded. And at the time, I remember thinking like, maybe it's already overcrowded. It wasn't. And now it's everyone kind of rolls their eyes and goes, yeah, but I'm already getting what I want from this, right? Whereas before it was like, well, I'm not getting what I want from this one, so I'm going to try this one. I think that's the difference. All of them are so damn good. STL's awesome. ML Sound Labs, awesome. Neural DSP, of course, awesome. It's all so awesome. And I think it's diluted everything, and everyone kind of has option paralysis when it comes to that stuff. I was in discussions with Miko to do at least another amp sim plugin. I was going to make an amp sim with all of the revisions of my rectifiers. I was going to take all of my rectifiers and analyze them and make them all into a plugin so you can flip through the different revisions of all the rectifiers. But at the end of the day, I thought no one's going to care. And I honestly think no one would care about that. So yeah, I don't know. It's very oversaturated, but the good side of that is we all have so much cool stuff to play with, and that's not a bad thing at all. Steve T asks, if you could only have one amp in your collection, what would it be? Ugh, Lord. If I had to have one amplifier to do what I do right now, today, it would either be my super early 3-channel triple rectifier, or, God. Maybe the Mesa Mark 7, because I'm just thinking versatility here, right? Or the MLC Vogue amp. One of those three. And that's so I can get a great clean channel. I can carve high gain tones. It'd probably be the Mark 7, honestly, if I had to actually choose an amplifier and continue to do everything I do. Mix records, reamp guitar tones, use stuff for demos. If I had to have one amplifier out of the stuff I own right now, it'd probably be a Mesa Boogie Mark 7. I could do anything with that amplifier. Andy86L asks, what amp were you most disappointed by after being hyped to try? Kind of a loaded answer. However, here's what it was, and I'll tell you why. The Randall Thrasher that I did back in the day. And here's the story behind that. I think I can tell it now. At NAMM, Mike Fortin had built the prototype amplifiers that everyone tried out and in the press and all that kind of stuff at the NAMM show. This would have been NAMM 2013. And the prototype Thrasher sounded so bonkers good. It was unbelievable. And got everyone excited. And, at that time, I'm a pretty small channel. Most of us hadn't really done much yet. We had some views and stuff like that, but other than that, we weren't getting anything free, or we weren't getting anything like that, myself or Ola or anybody. And I came home, I was really excited. I was like, wow, I want one. I bought one, I ordered one from Randall, and months later, it gets to my house, and I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna be sick. And it did not sound how I thought it would sound. But I thought the problem was me. And I learned a lot with this amplifier because, I don't know anything about production. I don't know anything about, this one is made in, I don't know where it was made, China. And the production model is not going to sound the same as the handmade prototype that was made by Mike Fortin. Shocker. I didn't know that at the time, so I thought the problem was me. And I did get it to sound all right for the video, but I still hadn't figured out that, no, it was actually the amp. And I had some friends who also had some, or had bought a few, and we thought the amps were broken. Nope, they weren't broken. They just sounded like that, and they sounded terrible. And I still think that amplifier was just the biggest disappointment for me personally, because I bought that thing, and I was like, man, this amplifier sucks. Eventually. But by the time I made the video, I hadn't had the amp that long, and I hadn't really come to the conclusion yet that it was the amplifier. I still thought it was me and my ability to dial in tones. and I just couldn't get it to happen. And it was so difficult. I spent like a week and a half trying to get the results you see in the video, which I don't think were that great. But, you know, live and let learn. I was just inexperienced at the time and didn't know, like, hey, the amp's just different than the prototype I played it now. That's all. And I think a lot of people have that experience. So yeah, that would be it. Diego BM again asks, why you haven't tried any solar guitar in your channel? All good with Ola? Yes, I'm all good with Ola. I had dinner with him at NAMM. We got invited to a couple of parties, and him and I were just like, nah, let's go get a steak instead and have a drink. And that's what we did. Yeah, I should text Ola and get some solar on here. I should. I would love to have some solar on here. That would be great. He doesn't need a channel like me to promote solar anymore, but I would love to have some solar guitars for sure. You know what? I'm gonna check into that. I'm gonna text him after I'm done filming this. Judas Cool 11 asks, what is your favorite type of rectifier? I don't know if I can choose just one. I would honestly have to say the really early 3-channel might be my favorite. It's so mid-forward and barky. If I had to choose a 2-channel, it would probably be the Rev E, honestly, because it's very much like a Rev F, but a little bit more top-endy, and I like that. Much like the multi-watt. In fact, multi-watt's so good. I'm gonna have to say my favorite rectifier is honestly a really, really early Mark I 3-channel rectifier. Yeah, flame on. It wins the mixes, or it wins the mix shootouts when I submit them to the bands. That one wins out of the rectifier stuff every time. So the results speak for itself. Tyler Johnston Guitar asks, Desert Island rig, 1 guitar, 1 amp, 3 pedals. Oof. 1 guitar. I would choose my Teely Dan signature guitar from Ernie Ball Music Man. With Duncan JB in the bridge and a JB Jr. in the neck. Amplifier, I'd probably have to choose, you know what? I'm feeling fruity. I would probably choose the Bogner Uberschall Ultra right now, in this moment. Right now, I would choose the Bogner Uberschall Ultra. That amplifier is just so good. 3 pedals. Boss SD1, TC Century Noise Gate, and a TC Electronic Polytune. 3 pedals. Justin Mielheim asks, what's a good computer / CPU to start recording with? How much RAM, Windows, or Mac? Honestly, and you're gonna hate this answer, for audio, today's computers are all universally so good. It doesn't matter if you have a Mac or Windows like it used to. 10 years ago, my answer would be different. However, now, even the base model stuff, base model PC is just fine for most audio applications, unless you're doing huge projects with, but in that case, if you're doing huge projects, you should have a better computer than an entry-level one anyway. And the chances are you do. So for me, especially with the Mac stuff, the Apple Silicon chips, they've made life so much easier for musicians. I feel like that answer will be applicable to 98% of people watching this. Any computer is fantastic these days for audio production. And last but not least, Daniel Albertson asks, what's your thoughts on Spotify, Apple Music, etc., with the continuing discontent with the wages these companies are paying artists? Is there a vacuum in that part of the industry, or do you think something will be able to come along and be able to bridge the gap between small artists and big artists when it comes to streaming revenue splits? That's a deep question. As someone who benefited greatly from Spotify playlisting, it got my band signed. We utilized Spotify not for the monetary value, because Spotify pays absolutely crap to artists. However, it does give them a lot of bragging rights if they have a lot of plays. right? So as an example, my band Dragged Under released our first album independently, no label. We had 5 million plays by the time the album came out from the singles and stuff. And all of a sudden labels were like, hey, what's up? And there was a bidding war, and we signed a record deal, and we toured the world for several years. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. However, someone that's looking to make money from Spotify or Apple Music, and I will point out that Apple Music pays dramatically more than Spotify, which is not saying much. It's still not a lot, but they pay way more than Spotify. And I believe Spotify just raised the rates of their membership even more. The Spotify model will die eventually, and there's something that will replace it. I promise. However, I think bands look at the streaming services incorrectly. It's a promotional tool. That's all it is. It's not a way to make actual money. The way you make actual money as an artist today in the modern world is you go out and you see the people, you go on tour, and you sell merch. All the guys in Slipknot will tell you that Slipknot is a merch company first and a band second, right? Like, they sell so much merch. All of the big bands do for a reason, because that's what generates the actual hard cash, not streams. I think once you wrap your head around that as an artist, it's easier to move forward and kind of plan your strategies. But it's real important that you leave home and you go and see the people and you play shows. That is still the best way to go and make money. So it's not Spotify, it's not Apple Music, but for me, I've been kind of burnt out on technology lately. I got a refurbed solid state modded iPod, and I loaded it up with all of the MP3 music that I own, and I listen to that most of the time. It's like an iPad or iPod. It's awesome. So yeah, take that for what you will. That's my experience with all those kinds of things. But Spotify especially, Spotify sucks. And that does it for this episode of FAQ Mondays. If you have a question that you would like to see on a future episode, leave a comment down below. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so to further support this channel. And with that, you've been wonderful. I've been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.